This month is Domestic Abuse Month worldwide. And so, being the last of the month, 31st, with this event is to raise awareness on domestic abuse. And what we have is survivors giving their experience. And we have two ladies who are singing. And then there is an interview process between myself and one other, discussing some of the significant points about domestic abuse, the myths surrounding domestic abuse, understanding why people do not leave an abusive relationship, and issues like when someone says to someone, I'm being abused, a lot of people's response is, why don't you leave? And that is because they do not understand the psychology of domestic abuse. So our Q&A today is about bringing awareness, getting people to ask questions, and hopefully giving them information that they might not necessarily be aware of.
So looking at, so your point, I guess, is like spread some information about domestic abuse. So looking at, I guess, the prevalence of it, you would have done research and so on. What are the numbers of that? How prevalent is that here in our society?
Right. Realistically and honestly, Barbados does not have a full concept of the number of abuse victims in Barbados. And that is because the last national survey was done in 2009. And since then, we have not had a survey. So we honestly do not know. What we do know is that the police retain records. And that is only for those people who, of course, go to the police station that they could record. And there are lots of people who do not go to the police station. As an organization, we keep our own records. Then you have National Organization of Women who keeps their records. You have Bureau of Gender Affairs. You have the Professional Women's Group who look after the shelter. So when you take on board a number of these organizations who keep their own stats, and it is inevitable that the person who contacts our organization is likely to be the same person who contacts one of the other organizations. So you might have a duplication. So the stats are not accurate. We are really off accuracy. And it is a serious issue.
Yeah. Without having those stats, what is that? What's the challenge of not having that information, though?
Well, the challenges are that we cannot really pinpoint a true level and then also put things in place. We currently do not have a national strategy on domestic abuse, although we are in the process of talking about it, but it is well and truly needed. And part of that would be to fully understand the impact of domestic abuse across the island.
National strategy.
Yes, well, they are processing of that at the moment. And when we have a national strategy, it would mean that we can look at the issue of domestic violence from a holistic perspective. We'll be looking at it from not only the perspective of the individual, but as a national issue. As you will notice that this week, two prominent people were discussing domestic abuse, the Attorney General and the Minister of Empowerment. And the Attorney General linked about the possibility of young men's violence with domestic abuse. And that in itself will be something that needs research to really draw a definitive conclusion, but it does have an impact. There's no doubt about it. The issue of, from us as a 24-hour helpline, our numbers have increased. We are getting more men calling us, but I will say that not so much that all of them are victims, but certainly suffering fall out of relationships, but that doesn't make them victims, but handling the impact of the emotional fallout and not having the skills to do that, to deal with that. And our number of women are increasing, and some of the violence have been quite, not so much physical, but highly emotive. It's very much sexual, lots of rape within relationships, financial, lots of coercive behavior, and it's sort of emotional and mental impact. A lot of the time people assume that domestic violence is predominantly physical, and from our perspective as a charity, most of our victims are suffering psychological impact, sexual, financial, not a great deal of physical. But when we do get physical, it is actually quite serious.
Yeah. What support services are there for people experiencing domestic abuse?
Well, one of our biggest challenges is that we don't have transitional homes. So a woman might want to leave that abusive partner, but she has nowhere to go. And by that I mean that she might not have family connections because they might not be healthy. And then, as we all know, our friends are helpful, but how long can you tolerate someone sleeping on your sofa? So from that perspective, women will stay within that abusive relationship because they have nowhere to go. And even for those women that are working, the average rent at the moment is $1,000 a month. Through our organization, most of the women that come through our organization are in the 2,000 category a month earnings. If you have a rent of $1,000 and you have children, and bus fares are so incredibly high, as you can see, there's not much room for maneuver. Yeah, and so those are the challenges. Financial and housing for us as an organization is two of our biggest challenges.